没有特朗普的这么宣传，全世界人民不知道华为这么厉害，这么好。
If we do not preserve the integrity of cricket, the spectators don't trust it, they're not going to come, they're not going to fall in love with it, the passion dies, the game dies.
I often wonder what, if it hadn't been for Primodos, well, dear grandmother's by now.
Do you need this plastic? Couldn't you use a pencil to stir your coffee? What's wrong with a pencil?
Let's bring you up to speed with the violent clashes which have broken out again in Hong Kong between pro-democracy protesters and police, this time inside Hong Kong airport. Police entered the terminal building and were met by protesters who shone lasers at their faces and threw missiles. A number of protesters were filmed being detained by those police. Frustrated protesters then surrounded a man who they believed to be an undercover police officer. He was inside a circle of people. His hands were seen tied with cable ties.
Their moves are severe and violent offenses and already showed signs of terrorism. The central government of China never allowed a few violent offenders to drag Hong Kong down a dangerous road, a dangerous abyss.
And I'm joined now from New York by Zhou Fenguo, who was a student leader during the protests in 1989 in Tiananmen Square and formerly one of the most wanted men in China.
The protesters now are occupying the airport. I'm watching it closely. And this is on every level, it's following what happened in 1989. Because the government never responded positively to what the protester demanded, so they have to escalate the way of protest. But the situation now is really fluid and could escalate to a level that I think to a completely different level. So I'm riveted by it now, and many of my friends are watching closely too.
Obviously, there is an agreement between the British and the Chinese authorities for a protected status for Hong Kong and special freedoms for Hong Kong for 50 years. Do you fear that the Chinese are increasingly seeking to break that agreement?
To me, I think they have done that in the past. You see that in many aspects. For example, the journalists and book publishers being kidnapped from Hong Kong, and the young people couldn't run for the legislative position. People all they want is just direct election, democracy, and they are denied. 2 million people were on the street. That's loud and clear. And the government ignored it. I think that's the main issue now. People's rights have been denied for so long. I was there 5 years ago. That umbrella revolution, all they wanted was direct election of the chief executive. And they were brutalized, and many of the leaders are in prison now. That's what today's protesters have seen. And they realize they have to ask for democracy. Otherwise, there's no end to the detriment of the freedom in Hong Kong.
For 50 years, people who say their babies were damaged by a pregnancy testing drug have sought justice and accountability from the companies that produced it and from the UK regulator. Tonight, Sky News can reveal that 200 of those parents are preparing to sue the government and 2 drug firms. They say allowing the use of Primodos was negligent and put patients' lives at risk. It's a major development in a health scandal which left children with life-changing difficulties.
I think in the social situation, it's almost as though I'm not there.
Your very bright, funny sense of humour, obviously.
Yeah.
But it's just people don't take the time to work that out.
No. I think it when they don't can't understand what I'm saying at times. and it's quite lonely. I'm on my own, and I've never met anybody I have a relationship with, never married, had children. I often wonder what, if it hadn't been for Primodos, well, be a grandmother by now, I would look quite pretty.
Recipients of the legal letters include the UK government for failure to protect patients and German pharmaceutical giant Bayer, who now owns Shearing, the manufacturer of the drug. Bayer told Sky News, "We believe this action to be without merits and will defend our position vigorously and, if necessary, in court."
Acknowledge the mistake that they've made in the past, put it right, and then moving forward to ensure that they doesn't happen again.
The founder and chief executive of the Chinese tech giant Huawei has talked exclusively to Sky News, telling us he's confident a deal will be done with the UK government. That's despite America urging its allies not to do business with the company as a result of security concerns.
约翰逊第三天，这个首相第三天上任第三天说了，英国要尽快全国无机化。我很重视他这个决策，只要认真测试，不会说不的。我们有信心，说不的不是对说不会是对我们，而是对别人的。
I want to talk about some of those US concerns, the relationship between Huawei, the perceived relationship between Huawei and the Chinese state. The first thing, the National Intelligence Law in 2017. This law states that any organization and citizen shall support and cooperate in national intelligence work with the Chinese state. I mean, that has been caveated, but why should we not just take the law as it stands in black and white?
不可能，不可能，因为我们任何一个员工都不会做这个事情，这个事情就意味华为死亡。 华为做这个事情，随时大家都不买华为的设备了，华为财务就破产了，那还能存在呢？不存在了，这不会的。
Since this crisis began, the conflict between US and Huawei, what conversations have you had with the Chinese leadership?
因为我觉得不需要对话，对话的目的我们就上了特朗普的当，特朗普就希望中国拿些利益去把换来，让华为的这个生存，对不对？ 那中国政府凭什么要给利益给美国来换华为的生存呢？我对我自己有生产能力。
There has been a lot of intervention by the Chinese government, you know, a bit of pressure on states everywhere to accept Huawei. Is that sort of pressure from the Chinese government helpful or unhelpful?
因为没必要，华为强大到美国都害怕。 你想一想，很多国家说还要证明哪个是先进产品啊？华为就是最先进的了。连美国都害怕的产品，还不是最好的吗？说中东有钱，哗全买了，连测试都不测试一下就全买光了。有钱国家哗买，华的活动增长很快。 那这超过我的意料。外面说，你看任正非，你的这个说话不准确吧？你有错误吧？为什么就说我说增长不起来？他说你们的报表增长得很快。那事实上，我们下半年增长也会很快。
So just to get it straight, to sum up, the US government is actually being helpful to Huawei, while the Chinese government is being unhelpful to Huawei.
对，你是非常准确评价。 没有特朗普的这么宣传，全世界人民不知道华为这么厉害，这么好，所以我们的市场空间是特朗普帮我们打开的。
Now, Russian opposition activist Lyubov Sobol claims that she has been detained by police as protests get underway in Moscow for the fourth consecutive weekend. Ms. Sobol, who is an ally of the Kremlin critic Alexei Navalny, posted a video on social media showing police entering her office to conduct a search.
The police are here at the centre where we collect signatures. They're going to break down the door.
I'm joined now by Marina Litvinenko. She's the wife of the former Russian FSB agent Alexander, who was murdered with radioactive polonium back in 2006.
For me, it's very important Sasha is not forgotten. And everything what he tried to achieve but was not able because he was killed, it's now happened. People started to understand more and more what he tried to do. And my position just to help to do this.
That you can't go back to Russia?
I would like to go back to Russia, but every time when I have this idea, something happened, and now when we see all these actions, absolutely illegal, just taking people to prison, it makes me feel very unsafe.
When you see those protests, what does it make you think? Is there any point?
I think it's a very important message to the West, and you need to pay attention. And I think it's a test how the Western governments will react. If they decide it's just an ordinary protest, or they will finally understand Putin was not elected as it's shown by majority of people in Russia. People tired for what happened in Russia for 20 years. And now we have another very serious message. Security service took control of Russia state. My husband in 1998 tried to send this message. What is it dangerous might be in the future for Russia? It was not taking then. Nobody believed it. When Sasha was poisoned in 2006, in his last message he said, Putin might silence one person, but a protest all around the world will be stayed all time during his life. And now we can see this. And this is a test for Western governments.
How do you see an end to the Putin regime ever coming about?
It's difficult. I think not about ending of Putin's regime. I'm thinking about how the civilian society started to grow up in Russia. It's never happened before. People were so passive. They didn't believe they might change anything. And from my point of view, this is very serious sign something going to be changed.
In the northwest of the US state of Wyoming lies a patch of land that's become the focus of a $27.5 million project called Mission Jurassic. The project, which is led by the Children's Museum of Indianapolis, has taken out a 20-year lease on the land and is leading a dig that has already produced tons of dinosaur bones, giving clues to life 150 million years ago.
We have some of the most incredible dinosaur bones that I've ever had the chance to play with in my whole career, ranging from the big long-neck, long-tailed dinosaurs, the sauropods, which people are probably very familiar with, Diplodocus at the Natural History Museum in London, which I think is now touring the UK. But it's these kind of classic Jurassic dinosaurs we're digging up here in Wyoming.
What's so unique about Wyoming when it comes to fossils? Why are there so many there?
We're very lucky here because we have the just so conditions for preserving dinosaurs, but also for having the correct age rocks up at the surface, so that it's this perfect storm when you're looking to find dinosaur fossils. But what makes this site so absolutely incredible, dare I say world class, is that it combines not only the fossil bones of dinosaurs, also their trackways, huge number of trackways, but also plants, because if you want to paint a picture of what the Jurassic period looked like some 150 million years ago, you need some plant life. So this site has become one of the best windows we can open on this moment in time.
20 years sounds like a long time, lots of hands on deck, but are you actually going to have enough time to get everything that you want?
That's the $64,000 question, or should I say the $27.5 million question. We are throwing everything we can into understanding as much as we can about this particular site in the time we have available. And it's remarkable that in this point in time, the Jurassic, a period of global climate change, and seeing how life was reacting to that climate change, it's got some really useful things that we can learn that might just impact us in the 21st century.
Almost 3/4 of us buy plastic bottled water. Can you believe it? That's according to new research out today, which also found more than half of plastic either goes into landfill or ends up in our oceans. It's an issue very close to our heart here at Sky. This study has been done by Britta. The actor Joanna Lumley has been partnering with a company to raise awareness of single-use bottled water and its evils.
I think we've all seen the films and we've all seen the plastic bottles in the water, and we've all seen that they don't biodegrade and there's no getting rid of them. We buy so much drinking water in plastic bottles, and it seems absolutely ridiculous because in this country we have absolutely gorgeous, clean tap water. Lots of people say, oh, but I wouldn't drink tap water because it may have additives in it and I don't really like the taste of it. That's why when it's filtered, It is literally fabulous.
So tell us, how have you changed your lifestyle? What habits have you changed? Aside from, obviously, the filtered water thing, what have you done to reduce your use of single-use plastic?
This makes me sound like Mrs. Scringe, which I am. I reuse cling film all the time. I reuse every kind of wrapping, everything you have. Everything that comes in plastic, I take it really carefully. The cellophane, which you can't at the moment recycle, you do that. The other, I always rinse it, wash it, and put it for recycling. You say, what else have I changed? Well, I tell you, if somebody gives me, let's say, a takeaway lunch, which has little plastic spoons, I wash them and keep them, because I'll tell you one thing, when actors are given cups of coffee, they never get given a spoon. But guess what? I've got a plastic spoon in my bag, which is washed and recycled, which I stir and use and wash and put back in my bag again. So just be so careful. Say to people, do you need this plastic? Couldn't you use metal or like me, a pencil to stir your coffee? What's wrong with a pencil? That's what I'm trying to say. Don't use a biro, obviously. Don't be stupid. Use a pencil.
My mouth cannot write you a white flag. It will never be a Bible verse. My mouth cannot be shaped into the apology you say both you and God deserve.
The Dominican-American slam poet Elizabeth Acevedo made history this summer by becoming the first ever writer of colour to win the UK's most prestigious Children's Book Award. The Carnegie Medal dates back to 1936, and previous winners have included Arthur Ransom, C.S. Lewis and Neil Gaiman.
Slam poetry is just a fun name to describe performance poetry or oral poetry that is done on a stage and you get a scorecard after. So it's a poetry competition. The heart of it is just sharing poetry out loud, but we make it a kind of a game by assigning scores.
And it also makes it more interesting, more relevant to younger people. It's not the same as sitting down reading some poetry by Shakespeare and written in a language that perhaps a lot of young people don't identify with.
Right, I mean, it's poetry that's meant to be embodied, as most poetry is, but you are thinking about how do I manifest the language? What do I do with my hands? How do I connect and look at people and create an experience in this space together? And I think young people are really drawn to the honesty of it and the vulnerability of it and, you know, the competition.
How did you feel when you found out that you were the first person of colour to win the Carnegie Medal?
I came to go to the ceremony. I didn't know what was going to happen. And the morning of, someone told me, like, by the way, did you know that if you were to win or one of the other authors of color, one of you would be the first? And I was a bit astounded. I mean, to be in a long lineage of so many amazing writers of color, right, that I really do consider myself someone who is grabbing the baton. And to know how many people I revere, it felt like such an honor to be able to carry that in this moment. And also that moment of, there are so many people I love who probably should have gotten this first. Right?
Yeah, it's a cross between making the hairs on the back of your neck stand up and also feeling a little bit disappointed.
Right, right. I mean, and it's a difficult feeling to carry. I'm so proud, but also just, I hope that a lot of these awards and prizes rethink the way that they've done things and the people they exclude when we consider the canon.
Because we have, you know, we've got people like Melanie Blackman who've been children's laureate, and we have big poets like Benjamin Zephaniah who have been out there for years and years. It does seem astonishing, doesn't it, that this hasn't happened before.
Right. And maybe it'll happen now.
The man soon to become one of the most influential in world cricket has told Sky News corruption and match fixing pose the biggest threat to the sport. The Sri Lankan Kumar Sangakkara, about to become the first non-British president of the MCC, says the game will die unless corruption is eradicated.
It is without doubt that the future of Test cricket is changing, and there are a lot of factors that have come into it, and one is free agency and franchise cricket, the spreading of the game of cricket across borders that are not very familiar with Test cricket, nor have the heritage and tradition of cricket to actually have Test cricket take hold. There have been many changes made to try and hold on to the current number of fans and spectators that love the sport, and also to try and bring in more and more new fans to the sport to make it financially viable, not just for the countries that have iconic series like England, Australia, or for the powerhouses, of course, like India, but for the entire Test playing fraternity.
But do you fear for the future of Test cricket?
Well, I think the fears are justified, and I think maybe at certain times there will have to be a change of mindset from everyone concerned as to what Test cricket means. Test cricket kind of encompasses everything that is beautiful and great about this sport. There is no doubt about it. For us, as part of the MCC, past players, present players, administrators, it is imperative that we take that responsibility seriously and we leave no stone unturned in the future to try and not just safeguard the game, but to make it really relevant to the people that play it.
So, Anthony Reiford, I mean, how do you prevent the franchises in one-day cricket taking over the game and effectively limited over cricket, white ball cricket becomes the sport?
I think we have to introduce cricket or give kids as many opportunities as we possibly can to get into cricket at an early stage. The key is to get people playing early, understanding the pride that they have in following either their county or their national team.
But will they want to play one-day cricket rather than test cricket? Is test cricket the thing that we need to preserve?
Well, if we can introduce people to the short form, then hopefully they'll get the opportunity, they'll like it, they'll enjoy it, they'll understand it, and they'll want to graduate to the ultimate form, which, as Kumar says, is playing test cricket for your country.
Corruption has been identified as and match fixing. How much of a threat do you think that is?
It is the biggest threat to the integrity of the sport, the trust that the fans and spectators have in it. When it comes to commercial terms of marketing and sponsors, you want to watch something you love and trust is exactly, I mean, what you see is basically, it should be what you get. And I think there has to be greater player awareness built around this, and players themselves taking responsibility to actually say no, first of all, and to be educated as to what the reporting process is and what the protocols in place are. Trust needs to be established between not just the ICC anti-corruption units, but the home board units that are in place. At the same time, administrators being vetted, selectors, coaches, all of them need to buy into this and to understand that if we do not preserve the integrity of the game, be it Test cricket, T20 cricket, or any format, if the spectators don't trust it, they're not going to come, they're not going to fall in love with it, the passion dies, the game dies.